I think we are. Thank you for being here. And with that, I would like to move forward. We have a speaker that starts off the program today, and it gives me no greater pleasure to introduce this gentleman, this Robert Brown, who's not only a dear friend of mine and a mentor. I'll say some personal. Robert and I, gosh, we met many years ago, and we were at a baseball game, out of all places, and we were sitting next to each other, and ever since then we sparked a great relationship, and one of the first people I thought of that would be great to get us started today. So Robert, I want to thank you for being here, but before you get up, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Robert, which you probably already know. He's very active in all things that are Georgia, but I don't usually read, but I will read from this. Robert L. Brown is President and Chief Executive Officer at R.L. Brown & Associates, an active community and business leader, a native of Dublin, Georgia. Robert graduated magna cum laude from Tuskegee University with 2 degrees in architecture. In 1999, he was inducted as a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Robert's business and civic leadership are evident in the impact he has had statewide and locally through many organizations that he is involved. Robert is a past chair of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority, the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education, and the Georgia State Board of Corrections. He currently serves as on the State Transportation Board, chairing the State Transportation Planning and Strategic Planning Committee. He is vice chair of the Georgia Historical Society and on the board executive committee of the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. He also serves on the boards of 2 public companies, Citizens Trust Bank and Georgia Power, as well as the Metro Atlanta DeKalb and Georgia Chambers. Robert is a former Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce Small Business Person of the Year, the Atlanta Business League Entrepreneur of the Year, and one of Georgia Trend's 100 Most Influential Citizens, with many other awards to his credit, including the Ivan Allen Senior Award from the American Institute of Architects, Atlanta chapter. Recently, his company received the 2010 Chairman's Award for Supplier Diversity for the Greater Atlanta Economic Alliance. Robert contributes much of his time and talent to serve organizations that promote education and lifelong learning, including the Livable Communities Coalition, the Early Education Commission, and the Agnes Scott College Board of Trustees. On a personal level, he is married to the former Barbara Willis, a 1976 graduate of Tuskegee, a native of Birmingham, Alabama. Their son, Robert III, is also a Tuskegee graduate and is Director of Business Agencies Services at R.L. Brown & Associates. Their daughter, Robin, is a senior in high school and will begin college next fall. Join me in welcoming Robert Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for being here.
For being here as well.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yep. I know the first thing you're thinking about, when does he practice architecture? Yeah. That has to be on your mind. But I want to talk to you about 3 things today. I got involved in public service, why I'm passionate about public service, and why I think architects should be involved in public service. So the first one, my mother and father, they were very involved in public service. My dad was a mason, and my dad was a builder as well. And my mother was part of Eastern Star, which was a volunteer organization as well. So I watched my parents, and I watched how they gave back to the community, and I watched how the community became stronger. In fact, when I was growing up, you had the principal that lived in the community, the janitor lived in the community, the doctor lived in the community. We didn't have different classes living in the community. Everybody lived in the community together. So you got the opportunity to see everybody working together for the good of the whole. So that's how I got started. Now, why am I so passionate about public service? I'm passionate about public service because I believe that it elevates the stature of architects. If you look at our curriculum that we go through school, and we tirelessly go through, in fact, when I was going through school, I had to go 6 years. I think they go 5 years now. But 6 years back during that time, you had some internship as part of that. But the good thing about being able to see the curriculum that you have been involved in, I understood the part about sociology. I always wondered, why do I have to take sociology in architecture? And I wanted to get right into the design. But now I understand it, because you're designing for people. And so you're in public service. And I'll just give you a few. I'm business oriented, but yet I understand the need to give back to your community. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I had the opportunity to go and speak to SCAD. Paula Wallace invited me to SCAD to speak to the students there. A few years ago, when I was chairman of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. So the students, I believe, felt I was going to come in and talk about all the prolific design projects that we had. And I did. I had some design projects that I was going to talk about. But what I really spoke to them about was the public policy foundation of each one. Because we would show the nice building and the design, but we would say, this is how it was funded. Because all of these projects are funded through some public policy. And so I can remember at the end, one of the students said, does that mean I need to run for public office? I said, no, I didn't mean for you to get that deep. But what you can do is stand on the edge of being an elected official. But the key thing is to be engaged. Because if you're sitting on the zoning committee, as you well know, and you'll determine the heights of the buildings and setbacks and all of that, who has the most knowledge about how to do that? Architects. I mean, we understand the built environment. We understand that we design for people. So that's so important. When I serve on the board of the Georgia Trust, we're dealing with historic preservation. And Jack Hyman serves on the executive committee as well, but provides a lot of expertise, as it relates to those policymakers sitting around the table. They have their perspectives, like they're lawyers, they understand the legal implications, but from design, architects have the best perspective to be able to deal with that. So then I'll go through the State Transportation Board. Now, State Transportation Board, as I was saying to a few of your colleagues earlier, that was quite different. But let me tell you this. This is a quick story. I was asked to serve on the State Transportation Board. I was not totally knowledgeable that you had to be elected. I tried to stay from around being elected to these particular positions, just as I told the students this game. So I was going about my business, and finally a couple of my the legislators said, I talked to a couple of the legislators, and they said, you have not called them and asked for their vote. And I said, call and ask for their vote? They said, yes, you have to be elected by your caucus, which are all of those legislators that touch your district, which in this particular case is the 4th Congressional District. Now, I should have done my research, but the person that had been on that board had been on that board for 21 years. And I don't even believe the legislators knew all the processes to elect a board member. So you have to get, in my case, I had 30. You have to get 16 votes in order to win. So after I called all the legislators, they said, Robert, we've already, I knew these folks, because let's see a minor community. They said, well, this other candidate called, and so they asked for my vote, and so I've committed to them. So when I went into the election that day at the Capitol, in the Senate chamber, I only had 6 committed votes. This was secret ballot. There's no open ballot where you stand up and you raise your hand. It's all secret ballot. And so also while I was there, I had no knowledge. That's why it's important for you to be able to speak off the cuff, as most architects are able to do. While I was there, they said, we need for each of the candidates to come and give a speech. Well, no one mentioned that I had to give a speech. And they said, we're going to start in alphabetical order. Well, Brown, that was the longest walk to that podium and the slowest walk to that podium, because I was trying to gather my thoughts about what would I say to these legislators with only 6 committed votes. What could I say to turn them around? Well, the bottom line is I went up and spoke about the fact that I was from Dublin, where we didn't have a lot of traffic. It was a very small community. Now I live in metropolitan Atlanta, where we have a whole lot of traffic. And what we need is a strategic plan for transportation. We need a vision for transportation in order to be able to deal with congestion and move the needle. So when they had to vote in the secret ballot, they took up all the ballots. And, I was getting ready to exit because, I pretty much knew what the outcome was going to be. They said, we have a winner. And they said, the winner is Robert Brown. And I was the most surprised because in secret ballot, you never know what's going to happen. But I believe that being able to talk to them as an architect and being able to convey to them how important it is for us to be involved in planning to move the needle for transportation, I think that resonated with them. And I believe as being an architect elevated the stature of an architect as we related among those legislators. So when you're going to the Capitol today, and I'll tell you this as well, when you've been on the Georgia Chamber Board and chaired that board, and probably the only architect that's chaired the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, it's basically a lobbying organization. So you get a chance to meet almost all of the legislators that you're going to see today. You get a chance to go to Washington and meet those congresspersons there, the men and women there that are making laws. And you also meet all of those, whether they're in your district or whether they're in other districts throughout the state. So by chairing the chamber, I had to go all over the state of Georgia talking about why we need to retain business in this state. Who does business resonate mostly with here? Architects. I mean, this is economic development. I mean, that's a key ingredient to be able to do that. So when we looked at business, it was always about making this state attractive so that businesses will come here and create jobs. Then they build buildings, and then, the rest comes with them. And so when you start to look at the Board of Corrections, in my service I was there, I was actually appointed by the governor. I actually served under 4 governors. I served under initially Governor Joe Frank Harris, Governor Zell Miller, Governor Roy Barnes, and Governor Sonny Perdue. So with Democrats and Republicans, which means we have to be able to cultivate relationships across all political lines. We have to be able to talk about what's important to us as a profession, because it's important for us to be able to communicate with them about the built environment and about economic development. And then education ties into that, then transportation ties into that, and then healthcare ties into that. So I'll speak a moment about the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority and that public service as well. Now, that was 2 counties. If you think about it, that was a public-private partnership that occurred a long time ago because it's dealing with the injured sick in metropolitan Atlanta. Now, I didn't know a whole lot about healthcare. My wife is a registered professional nurse, and I got a lot of coaching, from her. But not enough coaching to serve on that board. I mean, when you're dealing with healthcare issues, you really understand. And we don't design healthcare facilities. We don't design prisons. Our firm does. But I understood the process. And so I was involved with, I actually chaired the Building and Grounds Committee when the construction was going on the expansion and grading, which was the largest public works project in the state. It was $300 million back during that time. And that was back in the late 80s and the early 90s. But being able to work and guide trustees through the process of the selection process, the building process, working with the local architects, working with builders, was so important to be able to do that. And then when you look at corrections, I'll speak about that briefly. Now, when I was asked to serve on the Board of Corrections, appointed by the governor, I had no idea why I needed to be on the Board of Corrections. But the governor said, I need someone down there. We are under a federal court order, and we need to build more prisons. And I said, all due respect, Governor, it seems like we need to try to prevent people from going to prison. I said, but if that's the situation we're in right now, then certainly I will serve, because you know what they say, you don't turn a governor down. When the governor asks you to serve, and then you go and serve.